Every year, thousands of kids dream about making the NFL, getting drafted, getting rich, getting their name on the back of a jersey in a stadium full of strangers screaming it. So when a player actually gets there, and then just leaves, on his own, with money still sitting on the table, the whole football world loses its mind. They call him crazy, they call him ungrateful, they call him soft, they call him a quitter. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Some of these guys weren't quitting at all. They were calculating. They looked at the NFL, saw exactly what it was going to cost them, physically, mentally, spiritually, and got out before it could collect. This is the story of 10 men who walked away from professional football on their own terms, and somehow ended up ahead of the game that made them famous. No injuries that ended their careers for them. No cuts, no trades. Just a decision, made with clear eyes, that there was more to win somewhere else. 10 defectors who outsmarted the NFL. Number 10. Chris Borland. In 2014, the San Francisco 49ers used a third-round pick on a linebacker out of Wisconsin that barely anyone outside the Big Ten had heard of. By the end of his rookie season, Borland had 107 tackles, the most on the entire roster, 2 interceptions, and a vote for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He looked like the future of that defense for the next decade. Then in March of 2015, at just 24 years old, he retired. Not because of an injury, because of a book. During his very first training camp, Borland took a hit he believed gave him a concussion and played through it anyway, terrified of losing his roster spot. That single moment stuck with him all season. Over the months that followed, he read everything he could find about men like Mike Webster and Dave Duerson, former players whose brains were later found riddled with chronic traumatic encephalopathy after they died. He spoke with concussion researchers, with his own family, with current and former teammates. And he made a call nobody in NFL history had made before him. He walked away from a 4-year, $3 million contract at the exact moment his career was taking off, simply because he decided the risk to his brain wasn't worth the reward. That same offseason, longtime 49ers star Patrick Willis also retired over his own accumulated injuries, and together the two retirements turned player safety into the biggest story in football that spring. The league called Borland's decision a personal choice, unrelated to the sport's larger reputation. The country called it a warning shot nobody wanted to hear. In the years since, other players have pointed to his decision as the moment they first started questioning their own long-term health. Borland just called it doing the smart thing before it was too late to do anything at all. Number 9. Rashard Mendenhall. In 2008, the Pittsburgh Steelers took Mendenhall in the first round out of Illinois, and inside of one season he was already a Super Bowl champion, watching from the sideline as the Steelers beat the Cardinals in Super Bowl 43. A fractured shoulder had ended his rookie season early, an early hint of the physical toll to come. He bounced back with consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, becoming the engine of a championship offense and a genuine franchise cornerstone. The Steelers reached the Super Bowl again in 2010, this time losing to Green Bay. Then, a torn ACL at the end of 2011 slowed him down for good. After a rough final season with the Arizona Cardinals in 2013, finishing his career with just over 4,000 rushing yards, Mendenhall did something almost nobody expected. At 26 years old, having earned close to $14 million, he retired to become a writer. It started with a personal essay that caught the attention of literary agents and publishers, and it eventually led to a call from HBO. Within a year, he'd joined the Writers Guild of America and was working in the writer's room for Ballers, the show about life after football, pulling storylines straight from things he'd actually lived through in an NFL locker room. He became such a trusted authority on set that the wardrobe and production teams reportedly checked every football detail with him first. It helped that Mendenhall had always leaned literary, publishing personal essays online even during his playing days, long before most athletes were writing their own material. The kid who used to get hit by Ray Lewis was now getting paid to write the scenes about guys who get hit by Ray Lewis. Number 8. Husain Abdullah. Abdullah went undrafted out of Washington State and spent 4 quiet, steady seasons as a safety for the Minnesota Vikings. Then, in 2012, at the height of his career, he did something no active NFL player had ever done. He and his older brother Hamza, also an NFL safety, both sat out the entire season to complete the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca required of devout Muslims. For a role player, not a superstar, that meant giving up a full year of NFL salary and leverage at exactly the point in a career when every missed season chips away at your future earning power, simply because his faith came first. When he returned, he signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, and in September of 2014, on Monday Night Football, he intercepted Tom Brady and ran it back for a touchdown, in front of what was measured as the loudest recorded crowd roar ever at an outdoor sporting event. He dropped to his knees in the end zone and prostrated in prayer, and the officials flagged him for excessive celebration. The league admitted the very next day that the penalty was a mistake, and the moment sparked a national conversation about religious expression in sports, drawing a formal statement from the Council on American-Islamic Relations, asking the league to clarify its rules going forward. Abdullah retired in 2016 after years of accumulated concussions, but by then he'd already proven, publicly and unmistakably, that football was never actually the most important thing in his life. Number 7. Jason Brown. Brown was a fourth-round pick out of North Carolina in 2005, and he started every single game for 4 straight seasons between the Ravens and the Rams. By 2009, he'd signed a 5-year, $37.5 million contract with St. Louis, making him the highest-paid center in NFL history. He had the 12,000-square-foot mansion, the marble fireplaces, everything the league promises its biggest names. But Brown's older brother, Lunsford, had died serving in the army in Iraq back in 2003, and the weight of that comparison never really left him. In 2012, at 29 years old and with more than $25 million already earned, Brown turned down an offer to return to the Baltimore Ravens. Instead, he sold the mansion and bought a 1,000-acre former dairy farm in Lewisburg, North Carolina. He had never farmed a single day in his life. He learned by watching YouTube videos. He named it First Fruits Farm, and he built the entire operation around one rule: whatever the land produced first went straight to local food banks before his own family took a cent. The farm's earliest harvests alone sent out roughly 10,000 pounds of donated cucumbers and 100,000 pounds of sweet potatoes to hunger relief groups in the area. It now hosts community events like an annual youth fishing derby and has donated well over 1 million pounds of fresh food overall, all built on a covenant Brown and his wife made together that the farm would give before the family ever kept anything for itself. Brown didn't just walk away from football. He converted a record contract worth almost $27 million in career earnings into a mission that's still feeding people more than a decade later. Number 6. Robert Smith. Smith was a first-round pick out of Ohio State in 1993, and his early years in Minnesota were rough, constantly banged up with knee, ankle, and hip injuries. But in 2000, at 28 years old, he finally put together the best season of his career, leading the entire NFC with 1,521 rushing yards while barely fumbling the ball all year and heading into free agency with every reason to expect a massive new contract. Instead, doctors discovered he needed a third knee surgery, and Smith made a decision that stunned the Vikings organization from the inside out. Rather than call a press conference, he quietly emailed a retirement statement to a reporter who had covered him since his amateur days. He'd walked away at the absolute peak of his production, choosing to protect a body that had already been through enough over one more massive payday. Across his entire career, carrying the ball thousands of times, he fumbled it only 9 times total, a remarkable level of ball security for a workhorse back. He left the game as a 2-time Pro Bowler with 6,800 career rushing yards, a place among the franchise's all-time leading rushers that stood until Adrian Peterson passed him more than a decade later, and knees that still worked. Smith went on to build a second, longer career in sports broadcasting, working for ESPN, the Big Ten Network, and Fox Sports, and even wrote a book about his life inside the sport. 2 decades later, he's still getting paid to talk about the game he had the discipline to leave before it broke him. Number 5. Nnamdi Asomugha. Raised in Los Angeles by Nigerian parents and a first-round pick out of Berkeley, Asomugha spent nearly a decade as the best shutdown cornerback in football. A 4-time All-Pro and 3-time Pro Bowler who became the highest-paid defensive back in NFL history when he signed a 5-year, $60 million deal with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2011. A deal so significant it landed him on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the league's marquee free agent that offseason. But behind the scenes, he was already falling for something else entirely. He'd started booking small acting roles in commercials during his playing days, and directors kept telling him the same thing, that this was something he should really pursue after football. His Eagles contract didn't work out the way anyone hoped, and after a brief final stint with the San Francisco 49ers, he retired in December of 2013 by signing a 1-day contract just to walk away as an Oakland Raider, the team that drafted him. He didn't fight to hang on for one more payday. He leaned all the way into Hollywood. He went on to executive produce the Golden Globe-nominated film Beasts of No Nation, earned an Independent Spirit Award nomination for his performance in Crown Heights, produced the Harriet Tubman biopic Harriet, made his Broadway debut in A Soldier's Play, and landed his production company a first-look deal with Amazon Studios. Along the way, he married actress Kerry Washington. The cornerback nobody wanted to throw at now runs his own production company, quietly building an entertainment career most working actors spend an entire lifetime chasing. Number 4. Myron Rolle. In 2008, Rolle was one of the best defensive backs in college football, an All-American safety at Florida State who had turned down roughly 80 other scholarship offers to get there. He'd wanted to be a neurosurgeon since he was 11 years old, after reading the autobiography of Dr. Ben Carson. Then he did something that made zero sense to anyone chasing a first-round draft grade. He accepted a Rhodes Scholarship, an honor given to fewer than 2% of applicants, and delayed his NFL entry by a full year to study medical anthropology at Oxford. His draft stock cratered. He fell all the way to the 6th round, bounced between the Tennessee Titans and Pittsburgh Steelers practice squads, and by 2012, at just 25 years old, he was out of the league entirely. Most people would call that a wasted opportunity and a blown shot at a real career. Rolle called it a redirect. He enrolled in medical school at Florida State, the only former NFL player and the only prospective neurosurgeon in his entire graduating class, then completed a lengthy neurosurgery residency at Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General Hospital, followed by a pediatric neurosurgery fellowship at Johns Hopkins All-Children's Hospital. His mother stood beside him, wiping sweat from his forehead the whole time. He's described match day, the moment doctors learn where they'll do their residency, as more nerve-wracking than any NFL draft day he ever lived through. There are only around 300 pediatric neurosurgeons practicing in the entire United States, and today, Dr. Myron Rolle is one of them. The Rhodes Scholarship that supposedly torpedoed his football career ended up building an entirely different one. Number 3. John Urschel. A 5th-round pick who was never a headline prospect to begin with. Urschel was a genuine anomaly inside an NFL locker room, an offensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens, who also held a bachelor's and master's degree in mathematics from Penn State, and had already published research in an academic linear algebra journal before he ever put on pads professionally. He drove a used $9,000 Nissan Versa he'd bought with part of his signing bonus, and lived on less than $25,000 a year despite earning close to $2 million across 3 NFL seasons. In 2015, after Chris Borland's retirement made headlines, Urschel wrote his own essay explaining why he was still choosing to play, admitting that objectively he probably shouldn't, since he already had a bright career waiting for him in mathematics. 2 years later, in the summer of 2017, just 2 days after a major medical study revealed signs of CTE in the brains of 110 out of 111 deceased NFL players examined, Urschel changed his mind. He abruptly retired at 26 years old to pursue his PhD in mathematics full-time at MIT, work he'd been quietly doing during every offseason of his playing career, publishing papers on graph theory and numerical linear algebra between training camps, the same kind of puzzle solving that had made him a serious chess player long before he ever put on a football helmet. After leaving football for good, he finished his doctorate, wrote a memoir called Mind and Matter, and became an assistant professor of mathematics at MIT. The lineman who used to protect quarterbacks for a living, and who was known around the locker room for challenging teammates to chess, now teaches some of the smartest students in the country and sits on the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Number 2. Barry Sanders. For 10 straight seasons, Sanders was arguably the most electric running back the NFL had ever produced, a 3rd overall pick out of Oklahoma State who won Offensive Rookie of the Year immediately and then racked up 10 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, an NFL record. In 1994, he ran for 1,883 yards, and in 1997 he broke 2,000 yards outright and won league MVP, becoming just the 4th player in history to clear that mark in a single season. 2 years after that, on the eve of training camp in July of 1999, at just 31 years old, Sanders sent a fax to his hometown newspaper announcing his retirement. Teammates like quarterback Scott Mitchell found out along with everyone else, completely blindsided. Sanders was only 1,457 yards away from breaking Walter Payton's all-time career rushing record, a record almost every analyst in the country assumed he'd shatter within a single season, with 4 years and $36 million guaranteed dollars still left on his contract. He walked away anyway. Decades later, in the Amazon documentary Bye Bye Barry, he finally explained in his own words that the passion which once drove him to play simply wasn't there anymore, and that he no longer believed the Lions were a real championship contender worth chasing a record for. He left the game with 15,269 career rushing yards, good for third all-time at that point, behind only Payton and Brown. And it was Emmitt Smith, not Sanders, who eventually broke Payton's record 3 years later. He left the record on the table, and he still made the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2004, one of the youngest players ever inducted without ever needing the number to prove what everyone already knew. Number 1. Jim Brown. Decades before any of these men were born, Jim Brown had already written the blueprint. A 6th overall pick by Cleveland in 1957 and a Syracuse All-American in both football and lacrosse, Brown led the entire NFL in rushing 8 separate times across 9 seasons, won 3 MVP awards, and captured an NFL championship in 1964. In his final season, 1965, he was named league MVP after rushing for 1,544 yards, 677 more than the closest runner-up, a rookie named Gale Sayers. He never missed a single game due to injury in his entire 9-year career. By almost any measure, he was the greatest football player alive, and the league's all-time leading rusher with over 12,000 career yards, a record that stood until Walter Payton broke it nearly 2 decades later, in 1984. In the summer of 1966, while filming the World War II movie The Dirty Dozen on location in London, production ran behind schedule, and Cleveland's owner, Art Modell, threatened to fine Brown for every day he missed training camp. Brown made his decision on the spot. At 30 years old, still the best player in professional football, he retired, choosing a movie set over a football field, and signed on with MGM for even more roles. The gamble paid off almost immediately. The Dirty Dozen became the 5th highest-grossing film of 1967 and picked up 4 Academy Award nominations. He went on to appear in more than 30 films across 5 decades, from The Dirty Dozen to Ice Station Zebra to Any Given Sunday, becoming one of the first black action stars in Hollywood history, while also spending decades as a prominent civil rights advocate working to support black-owned businesses and rehabilitate gang members back home. Brown died in 2023 at 87 years old, remembered as much for reinventing his career on his own terms as for the records he left behind. He left the NFL as its all-time leading rusher, on his own terms, at the exact moment the league needed him most. Nobody ever forced Jim Brown off the field. Nobody drafted him out of it, and nobody cut him from it either. He simply decided, on his own terms, in the middle of his prime, that football wasn't the only game worth winning, and he went out and won the next one too. 10 different men from 10 different eras. 10 completely different reasons. A brain injury study, a pilgrimage to Mecca, a 1,000-acre farm, a Hollywood soundstage, a chessboard at MIT, a movie set in London. None of them got cut. None of them got hurt out of the league against their will. Every single one of them looked at the biggest, richest, most physically demanding sport in America and decided they understood something about their own future that the NFL didn't. They didn't wait for the league to make the decision for them, the way it eventually does for almost everyone who plays. That's not quitting. That's not even luck. That's outsmarting the whole machine, on your own terms, while you still had something left to walk away with. If you want more stories like this, make sure you're subscribed, because there are plenty more defectors where these came from.